Hello, my name is Jacob, and I am a Norse Pagan, and today I have an interesting video. So it's kind of a gathering video, but kind of not. So we wanted to try something a little bit different this year moving into the gatherings because they're just all over the place now. And while these big, large gatherings with, new people showing up are great, we also wanted to shrink things down a little bit and focus more on, things that we could improve on, focus on, growth as a community. And one of those things has been having a men's retreat and a women's retreat to promote positive masculinity and positive femininity. I personally held the men's retreat back in February or January, and Kaylin just got done holding the women's retreat or the moon weekend this past weekend. So I wanted to have this episode where her and I actually talk about it. I got her on Zoom here, so we're gonna have a conversation and share stories from both of our weekends. But before we move into that, Kaylin, go ahead and introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Hi, my name is Odin. I've been part of the Wisdom of Odin for a couple of years now, I think, almost from the very beginning. And it's been wonderful. Obviously, I'm still sticking around. And it was interesting to see specifically the fruition of these two communities or these two gathering topics. I didn't know there was a men's retreat already in the works. And when I brought up the women's retreat, it just shows the synchronicity among everybody here. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I'm so happy that both of them happened and that I got to participate in the first women's weekend or the moon weekend. It was amazing.
Yeah, so before we move too much into the amazingness of these weekends, because I've talked about the men's retreat a little bit on the podcast, if you listen to that, which you should if you haven't already, because Kaylin has actually been on the podcast, and it's probably the most informative episode we ever did, because it was all about the military. So if you want to know more about that, please check out that episode. If you have any questions on the beards or regulations and things like that, it's literally all on that episode. But if you are a long-time listener, if you're not, I have talked about the men's retreat to some regard, but Kaylin hasn't actually heard how it went. I've heard a little bit how the women's retreat went, so we're going to talk about that in this episode, but also why it is so important to talk about positive masculinity and positive femininity. A note we both wanted to bring up before we dive too deeply into this subject is if you do not identify with your sex. So if you actually identify as a man or a woman or any range of the spectrum, what happens to you? What gathering would you go to? And it's ultimately up to you. If you want to connect more to the masculine energy, come to the men's retreat. If you want to connect more to the feminine energy, go to the women's retreat. Ultimately, we have to earn our manhood or our womanhood every single day. It's something that isn't just given to us on birth or when you decide to become a man or a woman. It is just something we have to actively seek out through trials and tribulations, and just how we carry ourselves day to day. So I think even, myself need to go to a men's retreat to connect to positive masculinity. One of the reasons I actually wanted to wait to have this conversation is because I felt like I didn't have ownership of sacred feminine energy, and I have never really connected to that. So having a women's retreat where Kaylin's been to now, having that two-sided conversation. It's not just one-sided. We got, people talking about both ends, but ultimately, if you decide to become a member of this community, if you actually want to come to one of these gatherings, just talk to us. We'll find what works best for you, what you'll be most comfortable in, and what's going to help you most on your personal journey as well as your spiritual one. But with that, let's start with the conversation. Kaylin, let's start with you. How did the women's retreat go? Because you just had it. You just got back. It's going to take me a minute to actually remember all this. So how did the moon weekend go?
It started off like a typical gathering for me, at least, as far as ones that I run. So that means you plan to get there 3 hours early. You get there half an hour early, and you want to get the last minute things before you get to the property, and that never happens. But we got there. It was gorgeous. It was in the very, very, very northern part of North Carolina. We actually drove through Tennessee to get there, which was very strange. But we arrived and the property looked great. And people kind of trickled in. I think our last member didn't get in until 4 o'clock in the morning. So, but once everyone got there, Jacob, you're so deadpan and not interacting with me. It's freaking me out. You got to pretend like you're talking to me so I can have a conversation. So once we arrived and we got the last bit of groceries, everyone finally settled in. It's typically a little uncomfortable, especially if it's someone that you've never met before who's at the gathering or if you've never been. So just to point out where we started, kind of a little stiff, a little farther apart on the couch. But once we got supper down, got everyone settled into their rooms, we had our first evening. It was really good vibe. And then Saturday was the day where we wanted to share family recipes. So I encouraged everyone to kind of bring something that was from their family, you know, past ancestors, or just something you eat, you know, macaroni and cheese the way your mom makes it today, or something culturally that you liked, because not everyone has, you know, an active family right now. So that's okay too. And we swapped recipes, cooked food, taught each other stuff. I braided 87 people's hair that day, which was cool because there was only 11 people actually on the property. So I don't know how I managed that. We braided all day, rune beads, makeup, singing, exploring. We found that property was covered in natural quartz. So like I set it out here on my fun little thing. But we would just find these sticking out of the ground. And we would find one, and we were like little truffle pigs hunting for quartz. We get super excited and be like, oh my God, I found a big one over here. And we think it was because we had a giant bag that we started filling with trash. And as the trash bag got fuller, the quartz bag got fuller. So it just kind of seemed like good reciprocity from the land. And that actually led into our first ritual, which didn't happen until Saturday night, which was the goddess dedicated ritual. And we found exactly 11 large quartz pieces. So we lined them up in front of the fireplace inside because it was storming like crazy all weekend. And everyone would come up, they would crush some copal in their hands and toss it into the fire. They would choose a rock and they would introduce themselves with their chosen sacred divine feminine goddess name. So we all kind of had these alter egos throughout the weekend. And one girl actually didn't have one until later. But that was, I thought, really cool to kind of have a gift from the land and do like a little personal exchange to take your rock home. And then they introduce themselves. And we wanted to burn our offerings as we normally do. But since the lightning was so bad, and the lightning actually hit the outside fire pit, so it's probably really good that we didn't go out there. We just decided to lay the picnic table out on the balcony in a feast for the goddesses. So we set plates and candles and roses and incense and tea lights and handwritten letters and just everything, little pieces of stuff. And we made this beautiful display on the picnic table. It was so gorgeous. It worked out. I could not have planned it any better. It was just beautiful. And we left it out. It actually ended up staying out the entire rest of the weekend. No one wanted to touch it. Like we just couldn't bring ourselves to take it down. And when we ended up doing the Disir offering, which is our feminine ancestors specifically, we just added to the table because the energy felt like the goddesses had already claimed what they wanted. And then it felt good. It felt right to just keep adding plates. And then on Monday morning, we all took it out to the woods and gave it back to the land. But it was really interesting to see how it built. I'm a planner. I'm an obsessive planner.
She is. It's real bad.
Her year present that was not
was clipboard.
That was the best gift ever. I still have it. Every intention of you think you're in control was just completely swiped. And I handled it with a lot less anxiety than I normally would. So I think that's one reason it worked out well. But all of these no plan plans turned out to be so incredible. And we did each other's makeup and hair, and we did photo shoots all day on Sunday, which turned out so beautiful out in the woods and nature. The moss covered rocks and the trees, and it was raining, so there was mud in our toes. And it was so beautiful and meaningful. At one point, we were doing Disney karaoke because we wanted to sing songs that we loved. And then we wanted to sing songs that made us cry because feelings. It's not something I'm very good at diving into. And I didn't actually cry, but I got really close. I got tears. And people would kind of be like, oh my God, are you okay? And I was like, yes, I'm connecting. I'm opening up. But I will admit, I'm actually very afraid of connecting to people. And it shocked me when I felt like I was making connections. And I want to go to and host more moon weekends because I feel like I could have given more. I could have had deeper conversations. I could have bonded more. And I'm very thankful that I bonded as much as I did. But it actually intimidated me how close I felt with some of these people I've never met before because I'm not used to feeling that. I'm not used to getting very close to people that quickly like that. And a lot of women say that's how they feel around women. And many of us felt that way coming into this weekend. And I think we were all just completely surprised at how happy we were and how silly, and our dance party, which I hope we can get a clip of.
I've seen almost all the footage I've seen so far has been dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, did they just dance the whole time?
A good like 4 to 6 hours. We just had a playlist going, and we'd occasionally be like, play Freebird, and the one girl was service because the storm knocked out the Wi-Fi for the rest of the weekend.
That's crazy.
It was huge. I was in the middle of a very deep conversation, and every time we would kind of hit an impactful point, it would deafen us for a second. You could feel it in your chest. And like we went out hunting for the lightning, and I mean, we found it. Of course, we had to find the lightning tree.
Like, oh my gosh, like back when I was a kid, it was just like, oh my gosh, there's the thunderstorm, I need to stay inside, Jesus is bowling or whatever. And now it's like oh, there's a storm out there, let's go find where the lightning strikes so I can get gifts.
Yeah. So Amanda, Scotty, I don't know how she wants to be called, I'm sorry.
I think it's just Amanda on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amanda went outside to the fire pit that was outside, which is one of those stone chimney ones, and it had piles of logs on either side of it. And she found 4 logs that had been struck all the way through by this bolt of lightning and tons of splintered sticks. But she left one, and I got this one. So I'm very proud of my lightning log, and it looks really cool.
You need to hang that on the wall, just like get a big drill and just into the wall.
I want it to show, but I also, I don't know. It will be something beautiful.
Yeah, never let someone burn that in the fire accidentally.
We were going to give it in the DCR offering, but we couldn't have a fire. So everyone kept joking that Frigga made us stay inside in the home and hearth and bond with each other. And that they also took away our Wi-Fi so we wouldn't be on our phones all weekend.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So before we move, I lost your camera. There you go.
Yeah, I know. I got a phone call. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So before I moved into the men's retreat at all, I did want to I feel like we need to go ahead and say this. Is it so funny that Thor crashed your party? Like you wanted to have this like women's retreat, this goddess retreat, and Thor crashed the party almost immediately.
Yes. So we only did one single altar outside in the woods. It was myself, Casey, and then 2 other new members, one who's never been to a gathering, and then she brought a friend. And we went out, and Casey and I, we don't work with all the same deities, but we both work with Loki. So that's who we made an altar to, a shrine to. And we didn't feel comfortable doing it super close to the house, although Loki has mothered and fathered probably more, creations than any other deity. We still kind of were like, we're going to take this a little bit farther away. So we found a nice little spot. We built him just random twigs and sticks and logs and stuff. And we made him a little spot. And whenever the storms hit, it just reminded me of Loki convincing Thor to dress as Freya to attend the wedding. And that meme of John Cena and like some other bodybuilder where they're all super muscly, but they're dressed up in very cheesy women's clothing. And it says Thor and Loki trying to crash the wedding. That was exactly how we felt. Like we gave a little attention to Loki, and I think Thor wanted some too. But I mean, as long as he showed up, I think the first thing outfit, we would have let him in.
Yeah, I think the first thing I asked when I saw in the chat that Thor had crashed the party, I was like, he put on the wedding dress to join you. I see.
Yep. And we have some pictures that girls did with a big veil too. And I was just expecting to see one of them.
I just think that's really funny. Now, it's interesting because Thor was obviously for the men's retreat a go-to deity. So a little bit of background for the men's retreat. It didn't start because originally we were going to have Ben from Oaks and Oaths come because he's way more in shape than I am. He's very pro men's health. He talks about it all the time. It's what his channel is about. And so he was going to come, but he ended up not being able to make it. And so it left. And I was going to have him do most of the rituals because it's like, you're all about the masculine energy. I'm not really into that. It's just not really my vibe. I want to go because I want to connect more to my personal masculine energy. And so it ended up him not going and then me being the go-to guy for the rituals and the ideas and what we were going to do. And so then I was stuck sitting here thinking, well, what the hell do men do? What is a man's activity? I sat down and I was writing notes down. I'm like, should we work out? Do we play football? What do I do this weekend? And then eventually I landed on martial arts. I was like, okay, I'll pay for a martial arts instructor to come out and teach us martial arts. That sounds cool. That did not work out very well because I ended up getting contact with one. We stayed down in Tennessee and one that was relatively close. And I don't know which way I'm going to talk to here. Hey, how's it going, YouTube? Okay, so I ended up... No, now this feels weird. I'm talking back to you. So I got in contact with this martial arts instructor and had like a conversation with him on the phone. And I was very forward about what we were. I was like, hey, we're, a religious group. We want to promote men's health. We were wondering if you could come out to the cabin and teach us martial arts. And he eventually said like, oh, you can come to my studio. It'll be like $200. I'm like, oh, that's a great deal. And he's like, what church are you guys with? And I was like, oh, like, we're not really like a church, bro. Like, we're kind of our own thing. And he was like, oh, cool. What denomination? I was like, like pagan. And so at first he was totally cool with it. He was like, oh, that's dope. Like, that's fine. I've done all kinds of things before. And he said he did like kicking for Christ or something like that. I'm like, oh, that's weird. But anyways, we kept going because... Yeah, because like he was kind of into and asked about the channel. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so we actually agreed on a price, agreed on a time, got everything set up. And then I got a text like an hour later. He was like, hey, so I think that my relationship with Jesus is going to stop me from teaching you guys because I think it goes against my religious beliefs. And at first I was like, that's fair. I was honest, I was open, and that's what he chooses to do. I don't want to put him in an uncomfortable position. And then he flipped the script and said, but I will teach you guys for free. But you just have to sign a waiver acknowledging that I'm teaching you martial arts under the doctrine and teachings of Jesus Christ. And I'm like, are you trying to convert us by teaching us martial arts? Like, what the hell? Yeah, so I didn't know what to say. I was just like, nah, dude. Like, I think I got a little gruff with him. I was just like, are you really trying to, use your business to convert people? Like, that is really messed up, and you should acknowledge that. But, like, whatever, goodbye. And so I was like, all right, I'm not doing the martial arts thing because that was just weird. So then I was thinking, I'm like, all right, what can we do? I have no idea. And so I started doing research. I'm like, I'm really into hiking. Logan and Parker, who are really into hiking. And I've been getting a lot better. I wasn't to the point where I finally felt like I was at the point where I could do something significant. And since we were going down to Tennessee, the Smoky Mountains, we're like, let's climb a mountain. And so we started doing research, and we found the tallest mountain in the Smoky Mountain National Park. I believe it's in the Smoky Mountain National Park. It's Mount LeConte. And it's also like the third highest in like the Appalachians, I believe. It's like 6,300 feet. Yeah, and I was like, we're climbing a mountain, boys. And that was honestly, I'm so glad we decided to do that because it was the best experience. And I think it was great because we had an interesting range of people like Logan and Parker and I guess myself a little bit. We're more experienced hikers. I mean, Parker is literally the wild land and lives in the woods. Logan is a biologist and is always in the woods. So like I knew they could handle it. But then we had people like Heath coming, myself, Keenan, Caleb, all in that kind of also like not so great at hiking, first time doing something this crazy. And so we always had that dynamic of Logan and Parker were kind of up on their own. I was in the weird middle and we had people behind. So we had to do this thing where we like stood together. And I remember all 9 of us walking up like it was the Lord of the Rings. Because let me tell you, this was kind of a sketchy mountain. Like, it was in the winter. Like, we did this in February or January. And down in the valley, it was like 50 degrees. And we're like, oh, this is going to be fine. And we stop at the visitor center before we get into like the national park. And they're like, you got snow clamps? Like, the heck is a snow clamp? And they're like, oh, it's real icy on top of that mountain. You're going to need snow clamps. And so luckily I was worried it was a scam. Like, of course, the visitor center guy is like, oh, you need to go buy some. I got a store that sells them. It's like, oh, he's just trying to make some money. But I am so glad we bought those snow clamps. So one, because Heath is an idiot and wore cowboy boots to hike a mountain with no tread on them whatsoever. But let me tell you, I'll try to put some of the pictures, but he looks awesome. Like, he's wearing a duster, he's got his cowboy hat on, he's got cowboy boots. He looks like he is straight out of like Red Dead Redemption or any Western movie in the mountains. It looks awesome, but he's also an idiot because like that stuff is heavy, it is not warm, and he was wearing cowboy boots. But he made it. And then we had old Beck climb the mountain with us too. Beck was the youngest one there, I believe, which is one of the reasons we brought him with us is because it's like, we had an interesting range of guys. We had guys that were married, guys that were single, guys that were kind of in the middle, and it's like we were all able to learn from one another. And like Beck, he wore his ritual clothing, which are basically like cheap Halloween pants almost, and no underwear to climb a mountain. And he was like, man, I am so cold. I'm like, yeah, you're an idiot. And so we roasted this dude all the way up the mountain. But he ended up like it's that thing where it's like, I do feel like in some degree, like with men, we roast each other. I don't know if it's true with women too, but like, I think playful roasting is important because we're all imperfect beings. And so when we actually take that time and we just give each other a hard time, you know, I feel like it does help. You know, you can't bully, but I think positive roasting is totally a thing. Because by the end, you know, we made fun of him all the way. He was in good humor. But in the end, we got a little separated when we got to the top. And I had to rely on him. And I was like, hey, you know, you still got energy because you're like 22 years old or whatever. Like, I need you to go find everyone else. We're all exhausted. We're getting separated. It's getting late. Please go find everyone else and let's get off this mountain. Sure enough, he shot ahead, found everyone, got everyone back together. And so, like, we really had to work as a team to really survive this mountain, because what happened is it took, again, it was winter, so we didn't have much daylight. So by the time we actually got to the top, was about 4.5, 5 hours, a 4-mile hike, 5-mile hike, something like that, all the way up 6,300 feet. And by the time we got up there, it was late, and a snowstorm came in at the top of a mountain. And so, first mountain I ever climbed, and of course there's a snowstorm. And it was just blowing. I think in total it snowed about 5 inches in half an hour. And some of those mountain passes were narrow, and it was straight up like ice covered. You slip, you're going down 6,000 feet. Like, it was crazy. No. And that's also when we got separated. So that's actually when things got real. It was no longer a hike. It is snowing, and we're on top of a mountain, and we're tired, and we need to get off this mountain. So, like, it was a really great, we had a come together moment. And then after we finally got back together, we climbed down. We ended up having one of the best views we had the whole time when the snow cleared, and we could see the entire mountain valley from the top. Awesome experience. But yeah, I mean, you know, that compared to a martial arts teacher who was totally going to try to convert us, I would take that mountain 1,000 times over.
Absolutely. It is interesting just to hear about. It's kind of a relief to hear that sometimes with our rituals, you know, with the whole gathering, we think we have such a good plan. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. I was going to hire a professional photographer, and then we had 2 people that do photography. So they did it for free, which is good because there's no way I could have afforded. I mean, I was going to cover the first hour at $200 and then ask the rest of the women to be like, hey, pitch in. It's only like $10 a person. We'll have a second hour. I think I spent 4 hours in front of that camera. Like, between by myself and with other people, because we do like group shots and stuff. But it was so fun. It started pouring rain while we were out there doing photo shoots, and because, you know, we're pagans, we just got super excited and stayed out there longer. And we were like holding like the little plastic things from the playground, which was on the property, which is interesting. We had these little things to try and hold them over the photographers to protect their cameras, because none of us wanted to leave. We were just completely soaked. It was hilarious. We weren't stuck on top of a mountain in the middle of winter, uphill both ways, 6,300 feet, but it was still pretty fun.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you, we should probably ask this at the very beginning. When you first set out to do this, what were your kind of intentions of what femininity were? What energies were you going to try to connect with, and your original ideas?
That's a deep question for me. I joined the military at 17 back in 2004, and I was aircraft maintenance. So I was the only girl in the shop, and there was just a lot less women in the military in general, all the way through. And then shortly after that, I started getting into lifting. So I was in another circle where I was pretty much the only girl. I mean, that was not, Lululemon didn't exist. You know, like there's no cute girls in pretty leggings and sports bras knowing what they're doing. That wasn't a thing when I started lifting. So it was very much, I was the only girl all the time. And that was very formative for me in my life as far as how old I was. So it was kind of the only influence I had from 17 until I was like, I mean, honestly, until very recently, I just have not found groups that have a lot of women. And I don't think that that's any sort of negative thing, or I don't think it's because of hate or being oppressed or being stifled. I think it was just circumstance. I just was drawn to aircraft maintenance. I liked doing that. I liked the gym. I just liked things like that. But I definitely identified a lack of feminine growth and knowledge. And I didn't really realize how impactful that was. And I wondered how many other people my age or younger or older think the same thing. So of course, when it's like, oh, this is an all girls thing. This is an all girls sleepover, no boys allowed. It kind of makes me roll my eyes, because a lot of times I don't understand the point. That just feels like segregation to me, you know, because you're rejecting someone because of their gender or their sex.
Right.
Like, why? What's the point? But there are some natural things that I find we are drawn to with a stronger feminine energy than you would if you had that masculine side to you that was more predominant. Then mine was never really, I never had anyone else to share that with, so it never grew. And I was worried that I was super imbalanced. And I thought maybe it's time to kind of wear a dress. Just put on a dress, maybe wear something pink, maybe let yourself sing Disney songs and laugh around women your own age instead of just, my kid, who I can be like, I'm watching Disney because she's a kid. I'm really watching it because I like those movies. It's little things that I thought maybe I could learn to grow and embrace and see, what do I like about being a woman? And I have worked with Hel and Frigga mostly. I've recently started working with Freya, but I find her a little stronger and more intimidating, kind of in the more in your face level, as Hel and Frigga were both more subtle power that you had to approach to get anything from them. So it gave me a false sense of control, but at least I had that to rely on. So working with the goddesses has definitely also been a lesson. And those are the three that I spoke to the most, that I have worked with the most. I'm not comfortable calling on people or on deities that I'm not familiar with. So.
Well, something that I think is interesting that you brought up about Loki is the fact that he is a father and a mother, which is interesting. And not to dive too deep into that, but also I do think it's interesting that he embodies both sacred masculine and sacred feminine energies in one. Whereas someone where even Thor, yes, there's the wedding dress story and it's good fun, but ultimately he is a very masculine figure. And I would equate him more to more like the John Cena look, maybe like The Rock. It's they are not scared to embrace it or be be kind of funny about it, be almost, it's just really funny about how masculine they are, which is why it's funny when they put on a dress. And so looking at those different energies, and me being an Odin follower, I wouldn't say Odin is hyper masculine. He of course studied Sather, and I feel like I follow a very similar path in the sense that I adhere to Odin, but now that I'm working with Freya more, I'm having to embrace that more feminine energy. And it's really interesting that the ancestral idea, I don't think it's quite as far as we think about things now, but at least to some degree the ancestors were thinking about sacred masculine and feminine energy and how they exist in all of us to some degree.
I think that's absolutely right. I've seen someone try and look at it from a psychological viewpoint. They are not a established psychologist, but I think they were studying in the field. But they compared the story of Thor getting his Mjolnir back because he had to embrace his feminine side because he was too far gone on the masculine side. So he had to put on the dress and he had to put himself in a woman's shoes and go through the motions in order to get his manliness, his masculinity, whatever, his hammer back.
Yeah.
And so that, I don't know. I mean, I can definitely see the train of thought, and I don't know if that was the intention behind the story or Thor's fate altogether. Maybe, I don't know. But I can see how you do kind of have to turn it around and experience a little bit of both. Because I don't think you can be all one or the other and be okay. I think you have to at least come to understand or be able to recognize the opposite. I know I'm more feminine than I am masculine. I just never really learned much about it in my life. And that's kind of what I want to do now. But I don't want to do it in a prissy way, which is how it has always felt to me. It always felt, oh, you're girly, you're feminine. That always was a synonym with frilly, delicate, prissy, incapable of lifting something that weighed over 35 pounds. And I hated it so much. I went so far the other direction, but now I have to counter it back.
Yeah, so I find myself in a very similar position as, I've never been really attracted to macho manliness. And I think that's what we would almost consider that toxic masculinity, in the sense that all men need to be these buff, ripped dudes in order to be masculine. And I think I would use Odin as the same debate. Is I wouldn't say personally, and I find it's very common, most people don't perceive Odin as this super ripped, burly dude. He's usually quite a little bit older. He's a wanderer, and talks about living moderately. You should be healthy. You you shouldn't be over gluttonous, but it also basically lives a moderate and balanced lifestyle. And so I feel like that's one of the reasons I connected to Odin pretty early on. And I always found myself struggling to connect to gods like Thor. I still struggle with gods like Tyr. And honestly, I actually connect more with feminine gods than I do masculine gods, which is interesting. It's particularly with Freya now. But now I'm working more with Thor. I'm working more with Njord because I feel like they both have something to offer as well. I look to Njord for a lot of fatherhood, but also like protection, running this community, looking over everyone as we travel these seas. It's a dangerous world out there. And, I look to him for that fatherliness. I look to Thor for that brotherhood, seeking to reach out to other people in the community and just form those strong friendships. And so looking at them past their physical appearance or what they can physically do, and looking at the deities for what they do for us personally, what they do for us and our interactions with other people, is something that I believe is true masculinity and femininity, and positive sides of both of those is our interactions with others.
Yeah, it is so crucial to be able to recognize it in yourself and in other people, and then in different lessons and different parts, because it will also morph and change a whole lot. So it's not easy for me though, and I just find it interesting that so many women, I don't know if guys say this, I haven't heard it a whole lot, and I've spent a lot of time, a lot of 12-hour shifts overnight at 3 a.m. with nothing to do on the flight line, and you just sit in that truck and those conversations get wild. So I've heard some very candid conversations, but most women will say they don't make friends with women very easily. And I thought it was a very small group. I thought that was kind of set aside, but it's sad to me, but also reassuring that I'm not the only one. So I don't know what this blockage is, but that particularly I kind of wanted to maybe break down or get away from. But I think it's just interesting because we were talking earlier a little bit about how, the positive roasting or whatever. I mean, girls definitely can get, the ones that I get along with, we're pretty sarcastic. I would say if I'm super, super nice to you, I probably actually don't like you. But if I tease you and if I give you a hard time, then because I know I'm comfortable with you. Right. But I don't think it's quite on the same level as men instinctively. You guys, I think, can know each other less and roast each other harder.
I feel like our roasts are more surface level, but we're really hard on the surface level stuff.
Okay, maybe yeah.
I don't like one of this like now that we're deep into this this interview and this episode, I can say things that are just like weird. Like I never thought I would be having this conversation on the Wisdom of Odin YouTube. But one thing I noticed at the men's retreat that I've never noticed at any other gathering is no one cared that they farted. Like it is the strangest thing. Like I've never heard someone fart at a gathering, not once. I've heard easily like 30 farts throughout this week, and I'm like, is it because it's a men retreat and we just don't care anymore?
And it's
like
okay.
Yeah, like we're just sitting outside having smoking a pipe and smoking a cigarette, and all of a sudden you just hear like go off. You're like, they just let it go, and then before you know it, it was a domino effect. I don't know who started it. I don't know which came first.
Competition.
Yeah, like you would just you'd be sitting there, or you're walking up that mountain, you smell it, and you're like, like I don't know if we're just in general when we hang out in public, new people, we reserve our farting time. We're like, ooh, I gotta fart, and you like go away to do it. But let me tell you, once you get comfortable with people, it was just farts, just everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, exact same thing happened all weekend at me.
Oh no, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. That's not fit. No, girls don't fart. Like
we were ladies through and through. I mean, there's definitely comfort levels of, like I said, the very first night. It's a little stiff, a little awkward, a little just kind of, hi, yeah, nice to meet you. What's your name again? 4 or 5 or 6 times. But by the last night, I was actually puddled up on a couch with Casey and Bailey, or with Casey and another girl. I'm not sure how she's going to want us to do it. I have no idea. And the 3 of us were just, well, the 2 of them, and I'm not lying to cover at all. I really am being truthful here. They were absolutely sobbing, because they had done a ritual that I had a really rough night just out of nowhere. Casey said I got my gathering hangover, which I actually haven't ever experienced one like this at all. It was insane. It knocked me. I had to go lie down for a little bit. So I had no energy left for another ritual because I was about to lead the DCR ritual. But these 2 had done the hell ritual outside, and they came in sobbing. I mean, just, I love you so much. I love you too. And they were just pouring down tears. And I don't know if you know Casey, she and I have an ability to actually pull tears back up into our eyeballs.
I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we don't do that. We were listening to music earlier, and we refused to cry. We were just too stubborn to cry. We wouldn't do it. But it got to her finally. And so the three of us had really connected over the weekend. I ended up on that couch with them, and we were just somehow all three of us holding hands, but holding different hands. And I'm not even sure whose arm was around who. And then Kat would come out and lay like her fox pelt on top of us to make us all feel a little bit better. And then someone played an Enneagram song that is designed to mess with your head based on your Enneagram. And it worked. And we did not appreciate it. And we sat there sobbing, feeling attacked. But just the difference until Sunday, 48 hours of bonding.
You're freezing up on me. Hold up. Yep, there you go. I think it's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
What point did it stop? When did it start?
Right after the Enneagram thing.
Okay. So the Enneagram album, it's an entire album of songs written and designed to sound a specific way to target you by your Enneagram type and make you feel something. And so I assumed that it would kind of go along with your type, but then call you out. But it was exactly opposite. It shocked me. It was very strange. But the three of us were just, it was so wild to see how close we all got. Are you frozen? Am I frozen? Or are you just still? Okay. You look like the screen is frozen.
I don't know. Like I do podcasts all the time, so I'm used to just sitting down and just like.
I'm just move occasionally or blink so I know that the phone's not frozen. Anyway, we got emotional. We got close. We bonded. It was very strange. I did not expect it. And we definitely weren't the only ones. I mean, by the end of the gathering, we were just all so comfortable with each other. It was wild. It actually made me uncomfortable how comfortable I was with these new people. But I want to be better at that. So I definitely want to do more moon weekends. And we did not plan this, but the moon weekend coincided with the full moon.
See, when you tell that story from now on, you just got to say you coincided it with the full moon, because that just seemed like it fit so well. I mean, I think it was like the prime full moon too.
It was a big one. It was good. It was with like 3 or 4 C's, like a thick moon. Yuck. It was so beautiful though. It really was. It was just, there's no coincidences. It was perfect.
No, that's awesome.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I think if I had anything else to add about the men's retreat, besides, I mean, it was such a range of farts and survival. Like, I've never had such a varied weekend of getting farted on and almost dying on the top of a mountain. But I think, actually, I got 2 things to add. The God experiences we had. We did a very small ritual at the very beginning. It was like, I guess what you would call a sample. Like, we just passed around a drink and, hailed the gods, hailed the ancestors and stuff like that. It was very simple. But what we did for the mountain is right before we started climbing, we found a little creek, big rocks, ice still covered, snow covered. And we just sat there and we all dedicated the climb to someone. I think the majority of us dedicated to Thor. I know myself dedicated to Thor. Like, I will reach the top for Thor. That is my offering to him, is that I'm proving myself, and this is a men's thing. I'm improving my manliness and our bond as brothers to get to the top of this mountain. And if it wasn't for that, I know myself and several others would have never reached that top, because this was the hardest thing I've ever climbed, the hardest hike I've ever done. And we were probably a half a mile away, and I was just sitting there in pure exhaustion. And if I hadn't made that dedication saying this was for Thor, I would have turned back and went back down, because I was so exhausted. I mean, I can't even begin to describe how much my knees hurt. But the fact that I had dedicated it to something bigger than myself, and many of us did, like, I mean, there was, someone else in the group, I will keep his name out because he was very tired. And, He was done. I could tell he was done. But both of us were like, no, we got to keep going, because we dedicated this to something that is bigger than us, and that is my offering. Like, how bad would we feel if we let Thor down by not climbing this mountain? So, I mean, that's something that I think, we talk about real world value of these gods. Like, people might laugh and joke, that are not pagan, and say like, oh, they just believe in make believe. But whether our gods are real or not, dedicating that climb to Thor made me get to that top. And if I didn't believe in these gods, I would have never made it. And I think that's something really powerful, just not to just masculinity, positive masculinity, or Thor. I think that's just a sign of this religion in general, is it helps us accomplish things we never thought were possible, on both ends of this. But the other interesting thing is you guys had Thor crash your party. We had Skavi crash ours. because of the snowstorm, but also right after the snowstorm. Keep in mind, it was like 2 p.m., so we only had about 3 hours of sunlight in the valley left before it was pitch black. And so we were still near the top, and we didn't have much time. And so we were finally getting down right after the snowstorm. It finally had stopped. We had snow in our beard, snow on our shoulders. My camelback literally froze over. It was so cold. I watched ice form on it. And we're all like hiking down, looking beaten up. And there's this singular, lightly packed, small backpack, pink jacket, blonde woman standing there. And we're like, oh, hello. And I kind of made small talk. And I'm like, it's getting pretty late. We're heading down. It's about 30 more minutes up there. Kind of being that, the protector. I wouldn't say I was just like, whoa, little lady, I don't think you're going to make it. It wasn't like that. It was just hiker to hiker. I was like, yo, it's getting kind of late. And it's kind of hot, much further to get up there. And she was like, oh, you don't have to worry about me. And then she just starts walking up and we're like, okay. And so again, she had about 30 more minutes and we kept going down. And by the time we had gotten to the base, we had all stopped to take a break. And then sure enough, here she comes just walking by and she's like, you guys have a great day. And just swooms by us. And I'm like, what? She basically caught up an hour's worth. Yeah, we had 9 people, but still it's hold up. And just the way she looked and the way she held herself was just so I am the master of this mountain.
She's just going to the fridge to get a glass of milk and she'll be right back.
Right, yeah. It was just so, I don't want to say arrogant, it was just confident. And, sure, maybe this woman is a woman out there living right now, but, to me, that was definitely a sign from Skadi where it's we just got beat by this mountain, we just got beat by the snowstorm. And then that reminder of, the raw natural power of a mountain and how Skadi, a mountain personification is female.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of feeds into that Mother Earth, the connection. Mountains are dormant volcanoes. Volcanoes give the ash and the life and the magma and everything, create land. I mean, there's a whole lot of correlations there for sure. We actually had someone who, a few of us drove, a few of us flew, a few of us did both. One girl flew home and she swears she sat next to Loki on the plane. And my first reaction was, what did he smell like? Or what did his hair smell like? And I don't know why. I just want to know if I ever meet his human personification, I want to know what he smells like. I don't know. She said the first thing he said was, smell my hair. And he told her. And she was like, all he did, he just reeked of IPA. I'm really sure he was drunk. And he was just kind of rambling and going on. And she's like, yeah, cool. That's nice. Okay, cool. But then she started listening to what he was actually saying. And she was like, hold up. Wait a minute, can you say that again? And she said it was blowing her mind. And she couldn't even articulate exactly what it was, but it was just everything about him, the persona, the energy, you shouldn't be this comfortable leaning on the armrest on, a Southwest flight next to me. Just everything about it was so interesting. And I just thought it was really,
as soon as you said IPA, I was like, that sounds like him. I don't know why he sounds like an IPA guy, but now he feels like an IPA guy.
It's because it's obnoxiously trendy. That's why.
Oh gosh, I hate IPAs. I had a 30-minute discussion on IPAs last night. I was just like, it's just. The reason apparently they made IPAs is just so it preserved longer on the way down to India. So they just packed it full of hops to keep it preserved. So it was literally just made out of necessity, and now people drink it like it's high life. And I'm like, oh.
Kind of like prosciutto, right? They're like salt cured pork and ham. They just put something around it to keep it preserved on the ships so that they would last at sea or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like a delicacy, and you got to pay $45 to get free pieces at an Italian restaurant.
Oh yeah, didn't lobster used to be like a poor man's meal, and now you got to pay like 45.
Lobster. But then we ate so many, there's none left. So now they're like $1 million each.
Well, we are completely off topic now.
Yeah, lobsters and IPAs. Circle back.
This is a super long Wisdom of Odin episode, but I'm perfectly fine with it because we've had such a good conversation. But I think the last thing to end on it is if you do another moon weekend or you attend one, what are you kind of looking for that weekend now that you've had one?
We are definitely having another moon weekend. We all promised each other, everyone wants to do it once a month. Y'all can go ahead and plan that because I can't. I just can't handle that. We will do one. I would love to commit to one a year. I would love to see one happen at least annually. And I know the things about it that I liked in particular. I did want to kind of have a voice chat with everyone else. I mean, I just got back yesterday. So I am still definitely coming down and collecting my thoughts, but I do want to talk to everyone that attended and get their opinion on what the best and like not worst, but things that could have used improvement, and see what we can change. And if you're part of the community, if you want to join the community, if you have ideas, I'm all open for ideas. I'm not saying I would pick every single one and add them in, but the focus on the bonding of trading things from our families, you know, abilities that we had, sewing, braiding, cooking, baking, making stuff. You know, I taught someone how to fold chip bags, and it was Casey. She freaked out.
Oh,
I taught her how
to
to fold over a chip bag, and you make like a little kangaroo pouch and you flip it, and then it seals your chip bag for you. And she was so excited. She would just have people open bags and hand them to her so she could fold them. It's simple little things, but I mean, it's just fun because I do love the thought of, you know, being that respected, talented, awesome, like homemaker. I mean, I value that part of my character. I really, really do. And so I think sharing that part was really fun, even in simple ways. So that is the focus. I guess it's not exact specific answers, but it is a particular energy with the connection and the sharing of knowledge and talents and abilities, and also recognizing other people's and letting them be comfortable being recognized and being their form of feminine. And that was what I was looking for, and it blew me away because that's what I got, and I did not expect it.
Yeah, so kind of for like the men's retreat, like if I do end up planning one again, there's a few things, different directions I think you can go. And I think this is even true of a women's retreat as well, is, you know, we have a lot of men in this community that are wanting to be or soon to be fathers. And so I think it'd be really good to have a father's retreat, even necessarily maybe bringing the children, where it's just like, you know, passing on that parenting, fatherhood advice where we all can kind of teach each other's children. I would love to see that. You know, as someone that is hoping to have children here soon, I would love to see a positive fatherhood thing as well start popping up. Another aspect that I love that I learned, you know, like I thought about having education, having someone come out and teach us things. And I would still love to do that with like bushcrafting. I would love to do a bushcrafting trip where we just learn how to make things in the woods out of primitive tools, and, you know, maybe even hunting, like, you know, going up to, you know, middle of nowhere and just like hunting to survive and things like that. I think that's something that is a grand idea, but realistically it would take time and a lot of planning. But this whole like mountain climbing thing, it was simple yet dedicated and hard. So choosing other events like that, maybe not necessarily mountain climbs, or maybe through hiking, or maybe, you know, like surfing, you know, I don't know, something like that, something that requires discipline, skill, but also is a bonding ritual as well. I think is a great thing to do for these kinds of retreats, maybe even women's retreats alike as well. It'd be interesting if we did like flip-flop them and we did more of like a men's retreat with more feminine knowledge and then a women's retreat with more masculine things and like flip-flop them. That would be interesting too.
If you want to eat meat, you probably should learn how to hunt. Just saying. The
Right.
world goes south. You're going to know how to go out there and at least get like little rabbits and game and, you know, field dress them, cook them, prepare them, turn the pelt into something useful. I mean, that's stuff that women used to have to do all the time. So.
Right. Oh man, have you ever, this is totally not gonna be in here, but have you watched that show Alone?
Oh, I love that show.
I fucking love that show.
That is amazing. I remember one chick, she had this like net set up and she kept catching like big fat salmon, and she actually threw a salmon back, and I was like, she's going to regret that. And then sure enough, the seals caught on because she left the salmon in there for too long, and they destroyed her fucking net, and then she starved.
Well, I remember there was one of the women, I think it was in the Mongolia season. I didn't notice it for the longest time, but she had a Mjolnir belt on, and then she actually had a lot of like pagan stuff on her bag, and I was like, oh. But yeah, just to go ahead and close out this episode, thank you for everyone that's tuned in, because I know this has been a long one, but it's definitely a conversation I wanted to have and talk about these gatherings. Like I said, I want to start doing these more private, small gatherings. That way we can do them more focused while also doing these big gatherings. And not to mention, it gives us relief, because planning big gatherings is a lot of work, as we both know, and even with clipboards. But having these small ones, it's easier to plan. Usually it's more focused and it's more beneficial to the people putting them on, because we are also there to have an experience. I learned a lot from the men's retreat. It seems like you learned a lot from the Moon Weekend / Women's Retreat. And this is the reason that we're in the faith. We're not just here to work all the time. We're here to continue to learn and grow. So I'm really excited to see these small gatherings continue. But Caitlin, thank you so much for joining and taking the time to talk to me about this.
Absolutely. It was fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah, it was, now you need to rest. Like, I have had my 2 months to recover from the men's retreat.
Yeah. I'm gonna sleep good this week. That's how long it can take up to a week to come back from a gathering.
Yeah. Oh, one of the videos I just filmed was talking about like pagan hangovers and like spiritual exhaustion and things like that, because it is.
I've never had one like this. I felt tired just from traveling. I have never actually had like that. This is a gathering drain on your body energy until this weekend, and it happened while I was still there. It's just, I mean, I'm actually grateful because it means it was so powerful that it hit me that
100%.
hard. But it's real. Your body needs rest. Your mind needs rest after these gatherings. So if people do come, just fair warning. The good ones will get you. Yes.
All right.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode. Thank you once again. And folk, thanks for joining us. But this is a long episode. If you're here to the end, like, you're just one of the elite. You're like the 30% of people that make it to the very end. So thank you so much. We love you even more than everyone else that drops off, half off. Not really. I love you all equally. But until the hall, until the next moon weekend or men's retreat, Skull. Oh, Skull!